Welcome to Francis Quilts, the site dedicated to the wonderful art of quilting, with a few other fun things thrown in as well. If you like what you see here, be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe so that you can be notified of future videos. Hey guys, welcome back to Francis Quilts. Today we are on block 7 and 8 of our 12 ways to quilt a sawtooth star, so we are moving right along with this project. Before I go any further, if you haven't already done so, be sure to check out the introductory video and all the information. You can find it on my website, which is francisquilts.com. Go up to the top and click on challenges and then 12 ways to quilt a sawtooth star. It'll have all the resources that you need to get you started. Today we are going to have one very straight line block and one extremely curvy block. I think you'll have fun doing them, so let's just get to it. Our first block for this week is just all straight lines, tons and tons of straight lines. It has one of my favorite designs though, which is the square spiral. It looks very complicated, but it's actually quite easy to do. So let's just get into it and see how we draw it and then how we quilt it. When we start the square spiral, and let's do that part first, we're going to start at one of the corners, and then we are going to draw a parallel line-ish, because it's going to be moving out a little bit, from here up to here. But we want to find a mark that's about 1/2 inch from the corner line right here. So we're going to draw this line from here up to there. Then we're going to do the same thing. We're going to look for a point on this side, and we're going to draw a parallel-ish line from here to here. And you guessed it, we're going to come down here now and find a point here, parallel line down. Now this time, we're going to find a 1/2 inch in, but instead of stopping on the seam line, we're going to stop on that last stitching line that we just made there. So now we'll come from here to here, all the way over. Then the next one, we're going to come from here, and we're going to find a mark on the stitching line that we just put in, and we're going to come from here up to here. Same thing, on the stitching line, not on the seam line, here and over. Then down to here again on the quilt, stopping at the quilting line, and we just keep doing that. We're coming over, and then up to here, and then over to here, always stopping on the quilting line. If you are doing these without a ruler and you're just eyeballing it, my encouragement would be to mark your point here and your point here, and then just go fast. Okay, start where you can see where you're going and keep your eye on this point, and then just let that seam go. I think you'll find it will look fine and will probably be almost as straight as what I'm doing with a ruler. Now I have to be really careful and concentrate a lot when I'm getting down to the center section, because sometimes it's easy to miss where you're going next. But at some point when you've done enough and you feel like you're through, you can leave it like this actually if you want to, or if you want to just end it, you can bring this over to the opposite corner and just stop right there, and that ends your spiral square. It's actually an easy design, but it has some really powerful looks to it, and I like it for that reason. Now I want to draw some guidelines in for this next section for doing these straight lines out through here. And I'm going to draw several lines, one corner to corner here. So basically I'm going to do X's in these. Remember, these are drawn in with your water-soluble pen or something, hero marker or something like that that is going to disappear. And then I also want to come up and draw a line that's just somewhere in here that is parallel with this line right here. They don't have to be in the same places, and honestly, you may not even need it when you're quilting, but I think it's good to have a line here so you can see when you're doing parallel lines that you have something to kind of butt up against and line up against, so you know you're keeping those lines straight. When I start doing this design, I'm going to do it all the way around without stopping. And when I'm in the center here, I want to make sure I'm doing these two triangles as well. So we're going to start in one of these squares, and we're going to come all the way across. And then as we come across, we're going to stop and come down here, back up, over to here,
down here and back up, and over here, down here and back up. Then we'll come all the way across to here, and then we're going to come up like this, however far we need to go, and then over like this, and then up here, and over here. Now, while we are up here, I'm just going to go in the ditch. So this is going to be ditch stitching right here, and I'm going to do these two parts right here. When I come back down, I'm going to ditch stitch back down to here, and I'll come up, ditch stitch up however far I need to go, and do my line across, ditch stitch, across, ditch stitch, across. Now I'm going to come back down to here, ditch stitch down like this to this point, and we're ready to start another one of these. So we'll go across, back, down, okay, same thing we've done before. We're gonna ditch stitch up and over, ditch stitch up and over, and then I think there's one more in there, ditch stitch up and over, and then we'll ditch stitch down to here, and we'll do this next section. Remember, we'll come up like this a little ways, ditch stitch, come across, ditch stitch, across, ditch stitch, across. Now, I missed something here. I knew when I stopped right here, I thought, okay, I'm doing something wrong. I should have ditch stitch up to here and put this in first, and then ditch stitch back down. I think you'll see it when we're actually doing the quilting on it. It's going to look great, and let's enjoy it at the machine. Okay, as you look at this, you're thinking to yourself, that does not look like the quilt that we've been quilting on. And no, it isn't. What happened is I quilted the square and the square on the quilt, and it looks beautiful. I'm pleased with how it looks. But because of my light yellow thread on my printed fabric in the center, which I had bemoaned before, you couldn't see what I was doing. So I thought there was no reason for me to do all this quilting and you not be able to see it. So I'm going to quilt this square in the square design again and quilt it on just a scrap. This is a 6-inch square, which is the same size as the square we're going to be, that is on the quilt itself. So let's just look at how we're going to quilt this square spiral in this big square. The first step is going to be to start in one of the corners, and we're going to, remember, parallel-ish a line down here. The idea ending up about 1/2 inch from the edge. And remember, these black things that are on here are seam lines. So we're going to come in here and place our ruler, figure out where it's going to end up about 1/2 inch, and off we go. Okay, for this first round, remember, we stop on the seam line itself. Same thing, we're going to start where it is right now, and we're going to come to 1/2 inch on this side right here. Now we're going to come down, again paralleling this line, except bringing it out a little bit to 1/2 inch here. Again, ending on that seam line. Now for this next one, we're going to do it differently, because we're going to start here where our needle is, and we're going to come to 1/2 inch in. But this time we're not going to stop on the seam line. We're going to stop at our last quilting line that we quilted there. They're very close together at this point, but we want to just make that distinction and stop on the quilting line rather than on the seam line. Now the same thing, we're going to do parallel-ish out to here, and remember, we're going to stop 1/2 inch from this line, so we'll be over here, and we're going to stop when we get to the quilted line. Now it's going to start looking like something. parallel-ish, stopping on the quilted line. And then down here again, stopping on the quilted line. We're just going to keep doing that until we have filled this entire area up. At this point, you can see that my square is no longer square, but it's not going to matter. It's going to work out fine when I finish it off. I'm probably just going to do a couple more lines around. And as I said, we can leave it like that, or we can just do one line down to finish it off if we want to, just to seal up that hole. So here we have this square spiral quilted so that you can actually see it. Let's now head back over to the actual quilt and pick up with quilting of the blocks around that center. First thing I'm going to do is quilt this first line that I have here going from point to point. Okay, I'm going to come back to this first mark that I have. I'm now going to quilt keeping it parallel with this line that I've drawn, sort of. I'm going to go down and back up again. And then I'll come down a little bit further, go down to that center. And again, down and back up again. And one more time. Three lines will probably be enough in there, so let's keep going here. I think I'm going to try to keep these lines about an inch apart along here. So if I'm using the markings on my ruler, I can take this, start it at this inch and go to this inch and then do the line across. Let's see if that will work. So from here, I'm going to stitch in the ditch slowly. And again, if you're not using a ruler, you may want to to just mark those lines, just put some markings, registration lines. So I've stopped at 1 inch, and I'm going to come over here and I'm going to line my ruler up with this line that I've already quilted, and I'll quilt over to one side. Same thing, I'm going to quilt from here to here, the inch markings on my ruler, in the ditch. And then paralleling with this line down here, back across. And then down. Same thing now, I'm going to use my ruler and try to quilt up 1 inch from where I was. Stop, parallel across. As it ends up, I probably didn't need to draw that one guideline, but that's okay. So let's come up 1 inch again in the ditch. Whoops, probably went a little bit too far. Come back down a little bit. And let's do another line across. And again. We'll now come back down this line in the ditch and we will start this next one. When I get to this point and I need to return back to the next area, I want to make sure that I don't come down this line. I have a choice. Instead, I want to come down this line so that I'm ready to do the next one across.
This block was a little bit of a pain to do, and as you saw in the video, I really struggled with trying to figure out which direction I was going first or next in it. But I love how it turned out. You kind of get this really cool look going around here, and then again mixing in with these lines that are not perpendicular or parallel to anything else. Kind of gives it that little funky effect that I really like. This center is gorgeous. Obviously it would be nicer if I had done it in a different thread or another background, but I wanted to keep everything consistent for this quilt since I'd started it this way. But I really, 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 really like how this block turned out.
That first design was all straight lines. I hope you like how it looks. This second design is going to be pretty much all curves. We're going to be working with this little design like this, kind of a fleur-de-lis sort of looking thing. And let's see how we're going to quilt it. The first thing I'm going to do is put in some guidelines. I just find that it's easier sometimes just to have a few little points to be working on. So they're probably going to be something like this. And again, this is all done with a water-soluble marker. Okay, now we're ready to start with the fleur-de-lis. It is designed with three different parts to it. The first is a swoop up and down. This can be curved at the top. It can be pointed, whatever you want to do. The second one is a curve out to one side, and it's going to come around and make a little curve right here. Now, the most important thing with this, and you're going to see when I quilt, I'm going to have to stop a lot and think before I do it, is bringing this curve back inside and down. If I curve this up around like this, and then I come around on the outside, I'm going to run out of room to get back down. I'm going to end up quilting over this, and we don't really want that. But if I come in and then I go inside that curve, I can follow down like that. So then that's part two. Then part three is going to be up and over. And again, we're going to come back on the inside. It is amazing how much difference it makes when you think when you get to that point which direction you're going. There's so many free motion patterns that you have to think about that, or you end up going in different directions and it doesn't work out right. So we've done that one. We've come back to the center here. Now I want to do another one in this section right here. So I'm going to come down and back up. Again, I'm using those markings that I've done right there, and then I'm using this marking right here just to give me some idea of keeping this loop as symmetrical as I can. So I come down to the point, I'm going to come up and fill in here, and then remember I'm going to turn back to the back and down. Same here, I'm going to come out here and fill in this spot, and then I'm going to turn back inside and down. So when I get here, what am I going to do? Yep, I'm going to do these guys. And then probably I am going to stitch in the ditch over to here. And I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to come up and down. Now this one, because I have a lot more space in here, I may really fill it out. I may come over and make it bigger. And then back to the inside and down. Over here, same thing, inside and down. Then I'm going to stitch in my ditch over to here, and I'm going to do this set again. Let's look at it one more time. I'll have these in those triangles. I'll have this one up and down, over to one side and back, over to the other side and back. When I get here, I'll have one coming in, over to one side and back, and then over to the other side and back. And that will be our design. I think it will work out nicely in here. We're going to have these four points coming together right in the center, and I think that's going to be a nice design in the center. Lots and lots of curves. So you've had a chance to do all straight lines. This one is almost all curvy lines. All right, I have my guidelines drawn, and I'm ready to start quilting. Let's start with this dot to dot and get it out of the way.
let's get rid of that ruler and start just doing some free motion quilting here. So my first is going to be my swoop here. Actually, I'm going to turn this a little bit just to give me a little more angle on how I'm doing it. So I'll make this first big loop. Back to my point here. So now I'm going to do this swoop, and remember, I'm going to come back on the inside of it. Stop so I get a point, and then come back inside. All right, same thing on the other side. Big swoop here. And with this swoop, I'm trying to make sure I fill in as much of that open area as I can. And then back to the inside. Now we're ready for the swoop coming up this direction. A little bit harder to do since I can't see it as well, but we'll deal with that. Right, that looks great. I like that. So now we are going to stitch in the ditch over to this side so we can do this angle here. Again, I'll slow way down when I'm doing in the ditch just to make sure it stays sort of in the ditch. All right, we're going to swoop here. Again, I think I'm going to turn this time again, at least for these first two, just so you can see them easier. Now that first petal is shorter. We have a shorter distance than we do on these others, so you can make it a little bit fatter if you want to. And now when I'm coming out to do the side of my fleur-de-lis, I'm going to really bring it up and around, trying to fill in as much of that space as I can. And be sure to take just a little pause when you get to that point in there so it will stay as a point. Pause. Wow, that's fast. All right, I'm ready to keep going. I'm just going to keep working my way around. I will now stitch in the ditch to here and start that whole process over again. Here we go. found this block amazingly fast to quilt, and I love how it looks with all of this going on in here. You know, if you wanted to, if you were doing a different thing where you didn't have these dot to dots in here, you could even come in here and do another smaller fleur-de-lis come in this direction. I love this. In my original design, I had actually drawn it coming from the center with the curves going up like that, and it made a really sweet design that way. But doing it this way didn't change the look of it that much, and it meant that I could do it without having to stop and break thread somewhere in there. And you know I hate doing that. I think this block looks really good, and I'm very pleased with it. Well, I'm really happy how those two blocks turned out. I love the curvy lines. It was fast. It was easy to do. The straight lines took a little more concentration and a little more work, but I think it looks really, really good. And it would be a gorgeous way, I think, to quilt an entire Sawtooth Star quilt with just that one design. So anyway, that's it for this week. Come back next week and we will be almost to the end point. See you then.
Remember, if you like what you've seen, be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe. Please check out my website and daily blog at francisquilts.com, and I can be found on Facebook and Instagram at Francis Quilts. Thanks so much for joining me. Hope to see you again soon.